In a move to help ease the housing crisis, the city of Berkeley, California wants to tax landlords who keep their properties vacant. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of Berkeley, California. Okay, so I don't know if Berkeley is the most far left-leaning place in the entire country, but it certainly is up there, okay? Now, this is a place where they don't believe in landlord property rights. They are extremely pushing towards socialism, and I am not surprised by anything that I read whenever I hear about these ridiculous anti-landlord laws that they're passing, okay? So this proposal, it is actually a vacancy tax on properties that landlords are keeping empty. Now, there's a multitude of reasons why landlords keep properties empty. I'm not going to go into that again. I've covered that before. But it is the landlord's right. If they don't want to have to rent out their property, they shouldn't be forced to do so. But the city wants them to force them to do with the property as the city sees fit. I consider that a complete joke and, just trampling all over the rights of these landowners, okay? And it could come back to bite them in their butts for people who aren't even landlords. So, this is absolutely ridiculous. How far do you think it's going to go? Do you really think this sort of thing is going to pass? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, okay? So I read that in Canada, I believe Toronto has actually passed, or Vancouver, one of those two cities, has actually already passed legislation similar to this, right? Now, obviously, Canada is a much different country than the United States, but when you compare it to like a place like California, it's pretty similar, okay? But I'm wondering, for people who've heard of these sort of laws being passed before, how did it work? Did it actually accomplish the goal that was set forth by the legislation? So the goal being, they want to ease the housing crisis by putting more units out on the market by forcing these landlords to do so. Well, I don't think this tax is going to do that. Instead, what I think it is it's a cash grab, okay? The city is going to tax landlords knowing that they're not going to suddenly rent those units out, right? They'd rather just pay the penalty and keep the unit vacant, okay? That's what most landlords who want to keep their units vacant are going to do. Or they're going to sell the property altogether to an owner-occupant. That's not going to help the rental housing crisis. That's not, none of this stuff makes any sense when they pass these laws and they don't actually accomplish what the stated goal is, okay? Anyway, let's get into this article. It's coming from berkeleyside.org, and it says, vacancy tax possible for Berkeley's November ballot to spur renting empty units. Many homes owned by individuals and not corporations are exempt. Yeah, they say not corporations, but I wonder what they mean by that. Okay, but let's read the article, see what it says. Berkeley residents may vote this November on a vacancy tax to charge landlords who have left specific rental units empty for over a year, following a vote by the City Council late Tuesday night. The tax would apply to multiplexes, condominiums, rental accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, and still to be determined portion of the 1,000 to 5,000 vacant units identified by data from the Berkeley Rent Stabilization Board and the U.S. Census, according to Vice Mayor Kate Harrison's proposal. So looking at those first couple of paragraphs, and what it said in the title, it says that many homes owned by individuals and not corporations are going to be exempt, right? But if you consider the fact that an LLC, they consider LLCs to be corporations, even if they're owned by a single owner, right? So if you are a single member LLC, you own a single family home in the city of Berkeley, right? You could fall under this tax still. And then it says here that it applies to not just apartment buildings, but it applies to multiplexes, condominiums, and accessory dwelling units. And that last part right there is pretty important because a lot of landlords in places like Berkeley, they actually have an accessory dwelling unit sitting behind their primary residence that they rent out. So if you are a homeowner, let's say that you have a single family home and you have an accessory dwelling unit sitting behind it. You decided, hey, you were renting it out before, you decided not to continue to rent it out, and you're just going to leave it empty and maybe make use of it for yourself or whatever, right? And continue to live in your primary residence. Well, the city's going to come and say, no, you can't do that. We're going to start taxing you. We're going to start penalizing you for keeping your accessory dwelling unit empty. Can you believe that? Okay. So now people in single family homes who don't even want to be landlords are going to be forced into doing so. The same with condo owners, okay? Imagine you are a person who owns a condo as a second home. You don't live primarily in Berkeley, California. Maybe you live in San Francisco and you own a condo in Berkeley for your kid who is attending school there, right? Well, guess what? Now, if you don't have that thing occupied, you are going to have to pay that vacancy tax. What does this tell landlords? What does this tell property owners that you don't have right to decide whether you're going to be a landlord or not? The city says that you are the fault, you are to blame, for the housing crisis. So you have to rent your property out. Oh, by the way, with our other tenant laws and tenant protections, we have rent control, so you won't be able to cover the expenses for your property. Oh, and we have eviction protection, so you'll never be able to evict somebody if you do let them in. Okay? They've basically created a situation where, hey, let's punish landowners. Let's punish the people who own the properties within the city. And that's why I tell everybody, fight back against this stuff. When it starts hitting owner occupants, they were sitting there thinking, oh, well, this will only go after the landlords. Well, look at that little part about the accessory dwelling units and then tell me, hey, that isn't going to hit any owner occupants, because it will. It is modeled after existing vacancy taxes in Oakland, San Francisco, and Vancouver, Canada, designed to ease the housing crisis by urging landlords to either renovate and rent their homes or sell the property to someone who has the finances to do so. The vast majority of property owners in Berkeley will be unaffected by the tax, and many, many property owners will benefit from nearby derelict properties being fixed up, Harrison said, describing a terrible vacant building across the street from her home that has fallen into disrepair. Well, they seem to think that, hey, landlords, the reason they're leaving these properties vacant is because they are in horrible shape. Well, that is the case, okay? The cost to repair some of these buildings is, in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So it would take a huge sum of cash for a landlord to come in there, fix that property up, and then make it rent ready. However, then we come into the real issue right there. We've got rent control within the city. So if you invest hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars into the property, and then you're unable to, recoup the investment that you made, then that's a losing proposition for you. That's why a lot of landlords are leaving properties vacant, because it would cost them money to rent them out. I mean, it's a horrible situation to be put in, but it was actually created by the bureaucracy. Okay, the bureaucracy created the problem. Now they're trying to use more bureaucracy to try to fix the problem. Something that doesn't work. We're going to write more laws. That'll fix the problem this time. No, it won't. Harrison added that the tax proposal, which she says will generate between $4.5 to $9 million, will lessen housing speculation by corporations while protecting small landlords with several exemptions, such as a senior who is unable to stay in their home while receiving care. It would charge property owners between $3,000 to $6,000 a year, depending on their property type. Commercial properties are not included in this item due to hardships from the pandemic, she said. So they instantly exempt commercial properties. So this would only hit, the residential properties. By commercial, I'm assuming they mean stuff such as, strip malls, etc. Ones that have commercial tenants, not a commercial multifamily housing unit, because that's still considered a residential, even though, you would have a commercial loan. But anyway, $3,000 to $6,000 a year per property. So that would be devastating, okay? That's absolutely devastating for a landlord who already isn't making any money because their property is vacant. And them talking about speculators, do they really think that speculators are buying up properties and then just sitting on them vacant for years on end? I don't think that's the case in 90% of these, situations. Now, I believe that there are landlords out there who buy properties and then they're trying to go through a bureaucratic process to get an area rezoned or to get a project approved, and for that reason they're leaving a property vacant. But there's no reason why, let's say you buy an old apartment complex, right? And your intention is to tear that old apartment complex down and build a brand new one in its place, right? So to go through all of the the city processes and trying to get all the permits and everything, you have to sit there and wait for the city to go through its bureaucracy for, let's say, 2 years before you're finally able to start building. Well, the problem is the city now is telling you, well, you have to rent that out for those 2 years or you have to pay this tax penalty. You see, the developer is just going to pay the penalty. They're not going to, put tenants in the property. That's not going to actually relieve the housing crisis. And then, to make things worse, right? The initial intention of this was supposed to be to, help ease the housing crisis, right? But then they start talking about it's going to generate $4.5 to $9 million a year. Well, I didn't think this was an income generating law. That wasn't the purpose behind the law, was it? I thought the purpose of the law was to ease the housing crisis. So now you see what I mean when I say that this is just another cash grab by a ridiculous government, knowing that it won't solve any problems and punishing good landlords, good real estate investors, good developers who've been trying to do everything right, and just for some reason, whatever that reason may be, had to keep their properties vacant. So yeah, this is a ridiculous law. I hope it doesn't pass. Probably will. This is Berkeley, California we're talking about here. And look out for this sort of thing wherever you're from.